Arthur Vance thought he could bury my company and me along with it, but he never bothered to read the fine print. He ended up funding his own execution. Let me tell you something about men like Arthur Vance. They build empires on the bones of better men and brighter minds, then stand on the parapets of their glass towers and call themselves kings. They believe their birthright is the world, and anyone who looks or sounds different is just a temporary obstacle, a quaint little speed bump on their road to glory. I was that speed bump. Arthur Vance, the silver-haired, pinstripe-suited CEO of Vance Global, had made it his personal mission to flatten me. It started subtly. When Vance Global acquired my tech company, Innovate AI, for a staggering sum, I was hailed as a prodigy. I was the black woman from a state school who built a revolutionary machine learning algorithm in her garage and turned it into a billion-dollar powerhouse. The press loved me. For a time, so did Vance. He'd parade me around at investor meetings, his brilliant new CTO, a shining example of his company's commitment to diversity and forward thinking. But behind the closed doors of the boardroom, his praise was always laced with poison. He'd call me articulate, as if it were a shocking surprise. He'd describe my passion for my projects as aggressive, while a male colleague's identical fire was lauded as leadership. The real war began over Project Aura. Aura was my life's work, the evolution of everything I had built at Innovate AI. It was a predictive analytics engine so powerful it could reshape entire industries, from finance to healthcare. It was also the crown jewel of the acquisition, the very reason Vance Global had paid a premium for my company. But Vance never saw it as my creation. In his mind, he had bought it, therefore he owned it, and me along with it. He started by slowly strangling its funding, reallocating my best engineers to what he called legacy critical projects, which was code for propping up his outdated, inefficient business units. The final, public execution came during the quarterly earnings call. We were in the main boardroom, a cavernous space on the 80th floor overlooking the city. Every single board member, every major stakeholder, was either in the room or patched in via video. My turn came to present the progress on Aura. I was prepared. I had the data, the projections, the stunning early-stage results. I hadn't even gotten through my second slide when Vance held up a hand, a gesture of board dismissal that sucked all the air out of the room. "Thank you, Maya," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "That's very ambitious. But I've been reviewing the preliminary numbers, and I'm just not convinced the market is ready for this." He gestured vaguely at my presentation. "We can't be throwing good money after bad on a pet project, no matter how clever it seems. We're shelving Project Aura indefinitely to focus on core revenue streams." The silence was deafening. He hadn't just disagreed with me. He had called my life's work a pet project in front of everyone who mattered. He had publicly neutered me, his CTO, without any prior discussion. I saw the smirks on the faces of his old guard cronies. I saw the pity in the eyes of a few allies who knew they were powerless to intervene. I simply stood there, my heart pounding a hole in my chest, and nodded. "I understand, Mr. Vance." He gave me a tight, triumphant smile, the smile of a king who had just put a rebellious peasant back in her place. He thought he had won. He thought he had broken me, that I would quietly accept my demotion from innovator to figurehead. He had no idea about the intricate, ironclad clauses I'd had my lawyers bury deep within the acquisition contract. He'd been so eager to own my technology that he never bothered to read the fine print. Specifically, Clause 11, subsection B, the one we privately called the Scorpion Clause. It stated that if the acquiring party, Vance Global, were to willfully and publicly abandon the core technology they had acquired, namely the foundational algorithm of Project Aura, it would trigger a unique and catastrophic buyback option. That night I didn't go home and cry. I went to my private office, a small, unassuming space I leased miles away from the Vance Global Tower. I locked the door, sat down at a terminal that connected to a completely separate and secure network, and took a deep, steadying breath. I looked at the framed copy of the acquisition contract on my wall, my gaze lingering on clause 11B. Then I picked up a secure satellite phone and made a single call. A man with a calm, quiet voice answered on the first ring. "He did it," I said. My voice as cold and clear as ice. "He publicly shelved Aura. It's on the record of the quarterly earnings call. The trigger condition has been met." There was a pause on the other end, the sound of a keyboard clicking softly. "Understood," the voice replied. "Are we activating the protocol?" I looked out the window at the distant, glittering spire of the Vance Global Tower, where Arthur Vance was probably celebrating his victory with a glass of obscenely expensive scotch. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. "Yes," I said. "Activate Protocol Scion. Release the full 3.4 billion from escrow. We're buying it all back. And then we're going to burn his empire to the ground." The machine of my revenge was silent, digital, and utterly merciless. There was no dramatic explosion, no fiery declaration of war. There was just a series of encrypted instructions flowing from my terminal to a discreet private equity firm in Geneva. By the time Arthur Vance woke up the next morning, sipping his single origin coffee while reading the Wall Street Journal, the first wave of his demise was already washing over the market. It began as a tremor, a pre-market trading anomaly. An unprecedented volume of Vance Global stock was being bought up in a series of massive coordinated block trades. I walked into the office at 9 a.m. sharp, dressed in a crimson power suit that felt like armor. The usual hum of the executive floor had been replaced by a tense, electric quiet. People weren't talking. They were whispering, huddled around their terminals, watching the VG stock ticker behave like a terrified animal. It was surging, then dipping, then surging again, as the market tried to understand who was making such an aggressive play. I bypassed them all and went to my office, leaving my door wide open. I wanted a front row seat. It took him until 10:17 a.m. to summon me. His secretary's voice was strained over the intercom. "Mr. Vance would like to see you in his office, immediately." I took my time, collecting a tablet from my desk before walking the long hallway to the corner office. When I entered, he was pacing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, his pinstripe jacket already discarded, his tie loosened. The mask of the calm, powerful king was gone. In its place was a furious, confused man. "What is this?" he snarled, jabbing a finger towards a massive screen displaying the chaotic stock chart. "Is this you? Did you leak something about Aura to a competitor? Is someone trying to make a hostile move?" The accusation was so typical of him. His first instinct was that I was either incompetent or treacherous, that I had somehow fumbled and created this mess for him. The idea that I could be the architect of it was so far beyond his comprehension, it simply didn't exist as a possibility. I remained standing, calm and centered, in the middle of his opulent office. "It's not a leak, Arthur," I said, my voice even. Using his first name was a calculated strike, a removal of the power dynamic he so carefully maintained. He flinched. "It's a tender offer, a very well-funded one." "A tender offer? From who?" "No one filed the paperwork. There's been no announcement," he spat, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed silver hair, messing it up for the first time I'd ever seen. "The filings hit the SEC at 9:31 a.m., I replied smoothly, tapping my tablet and turning the screen to face him. It displayed the official filing document. "From a holding company called Scion Investments. You've probably never heard of them. They like to keep a low profile." He squinted at the screen, his face contorting in confusion, then dawning rage. "Scion. Who the hell are they? And where did they get the capital for a move like this? This is billions." This was the moment. The beautiful, perfect, crystalline moment I had dreamed of for months. "They got it from you, Arthur," I said, a small, cold smile touching my lips. "Remember the acquisition deal? The $3.4 billion you paid for Innovate AI? You were so proud of that number. But you never read the contract, did you? You left that to your overpaid, complacent lawyers." I took a step closer, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Clause 11B, the Scorpion Clause. It stipulated that the full purchase price would be held in a third-party managed escrow account for 18 months, contingent on the good faith development and integration of the core acquired technology. When you stood up on that earnings call and publicly declared my life's work a pet project and shelved it, you triggered the breach. But the clause didn't call for a simple refund. Oh no, that would be far too simple." I watched the blood drain from his face as the gears in his mind began to grind, smoke practically pouring from his ears as he tried to catch up. "The breach," I continued, savoring every word, "transferred legal control of the entire escrow account, all $3.4 billion of your dollars, to a designated beneficiary. A beneficiary named Scion Investments, my holding company. You didn't just give me back my company, Arthur. You gave me a war chest. You funded your own execution. And my tender offer isn't for a small piece. It's for 51%. I'm not here to get my project back. I'm here to take your entire company." His jaw worked silently, a fish gasping for air. He stumbled back to his desk, fumbling for his phone, his hands shaking. "Lawyers," he croaked. "I'll sue you into oblivion. I'll have you arrested. This is theft." "Is it?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "It's your signature on the contract. Page 87, I believe. But by all means call your lawyers. While you're at it, you might want to look up who's running the acquisition for Scion Investments." I paused for effect, letting the silence stretch until it was screaming. "His name is Marcus Thorne. You might remember him. He's the man you hired to orchestrate the brutal takeover of North Star Industrials 10 years ago. He's the best corporate raider in the business. And now he works for me." The name Marcus Thorne landed in the room like a grenade. For a moment, Arthur Vance didn't breathe. His entire universe built on connections, intimidation, and the myth of his own invincibility had just been turned inside out by a name from his own playbook. He knew Marcus. He knew the scorched earth tactics, the relentless pressure, the way Marcus could smell weakness and exploit it until nothing was left but rubble. The idea of that weapon being aimed at him rendered him speechless. His threats of lawsuits died on his lips, turning to ash. He knew in that instant that my lawyers weren't just good. They were sharks who had built an inescapable cage, and he was the one bleeding in the water. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in corporate warfare. While Arthur scrambled, holding furious meetings with his legal team who could only offer him grim-faced condolences about his own signature, Marcus Thorne moved with surgical precision. He didn't just target shareholders, he targeted the narrative. The story leaked to the press wasn't about a vengeful CTO, but about a visionary founder fighting to save her technology from a stagnant CEO who had just publicly admitted he didn't understand it. Our tender offer wasn't hostile, it was a rescue mission. The market, which worships innovation above all else, responded enthusiastically. Vance Global stock didn't just hold its value under the takeover bid. It soared as investors clamored for a piece of the company I was about to build. The final showdown took place at an emergency board meeting. I walked into that familiar room not as an employee, but as the majority shareholder in waiting. Arthur sat at the head of the table, looking 10 years older. His cronies flanked him, their faces grim. The rest of the board members, the ones who had offered me their pitying glances, now looked at me with a mixture of awe and terror. They were pragmatists, and the numbers didn't lie. Arthur made his final, pathetic stand. He railed against me, calling me a traitor, an opportunist. He painted a picture of himself as a benevolent leader betrayed by an ungrateful subordinate. He talked about loyalty and tradition, the very things he'd shown he cared nothing for when he'd tried to humiliate me. When he was finished, breathless and red-faced, all eyes turned to me. I didn't stand. I didn't raise my voice. I simply looked at each board member one by one. "Mr. Vance is right about one thing," I began, my voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room. "This is about the soul of this company. For the past decade, Vance Global hasn't invented anything. It hasn't built anything. It has only consumed. It buys innovative companies and allows their technology to wither on the vine while it milks the legacy assets. You call it core revenue streams. The rest of the world calls it a slow death." I leaned forward slightly. "I'm not here to tear this company down. I'm here to rebuild it. I'm here to turn it back into a creator, a leader. Project Aura, the pet project that Mr. Vance so casually dismissed, is the future. It's the engine that will drive this company for the next 50 years. You can choose to cling to the past with a man who sees innovation as a threat, or you can choose to build the future with the woman who actually invented it. Your fiduciary duty isn't to Mr. Vance's ego. It's to the shareholders, and the shareholders have already spoken. It wasn't even a contest. The vote was a landslide. When the chairman officially announced my appointment as the new CEO and chairwoman of the board, a stunned silence fell. Arthur Vance just sat there, a king in a kingdom that no longer existed. He didn't look at me as he gathered his papers and walked out of the room, a ghost leaving his own haunting. My first act as CEO was to reinstate Project Aura with triple its original funding. My second was to fire every single one of Arthur's old guard sycophants. Within a year, we launched the first iteration of Aura, revolutionizing medical diagnostics and predictive market analysis. Vance Global, rebranded as Aura Innovative, became the most dynamic and respected tech firm on the planet. As for Arthur Vance, he was forced into a quiet retirement, his legacy not one of a titan, but of a cautionary tale. He was the man who had a titan in his grasp, and, in his arrogance, let her go, only to be crushed by her ascent. He saw a black woman and targeted what he thought was a weakness. He never considered that my mind, my resilience, and my refusal to be erased were the most powerful assets in the entire game. He thought I was a speed bump on his road. He never realized he was driving headfirst into a mountain,